science and machine learning into the platform, which is, we actually strongly believe that this is where the SEO market is going. Just a sneak peek into our 2021 SEO roadmap. So we are adding to on-crawl multi-bot analysis and live logs monitoring for publishers and website migration, segmentation explorer for our users to be able to use different kind of advanced page segmentations with on-crawl's dashboard. I mentioned the internal linking generator as well. That will be released on the on-crawl labs in just a few weeks. And we're working on a big project around predictive SEO factors, with ranking factors actually, with which you can analyze a lot of information, a lot of data coming from the website environment. So not only the keywords, not only data coming from Google Search Console, but also competitors, data, etc., etc. So this is one of our big projects for this year. And that was it for me. So I will let Eli turn in for his presentation. Thank you again. And good luck to my friend Eli.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Let me get my screen shared here. Do you need to pass something to me?
You should be able to click in the upper left-hand corner to share your screen.
Okay, I got it. Let's see. Okay, can you guys see that or not? Take it to not.
It's taken just a second to load.
All right, do you have that?
Yep, there we go. We're good and up and running.
Okay. All right. Really honored to be here with you guys today. This is my first live presentation I've done in a year. Every other presentation has been pre-recorded. I've even I spoke at State of Search, I guess was in October, and it was pre-recorded. And I had to record it 3 times. The first time I forgot to turn on my microphone, second time the camera, and the third time was a home run. So you guys are getting the full live experience. It's really honored to be here with you guys today. So today we're going to talk about what should be on your roadmap in 2021 and how you should be thinking about your SEO planning. I'm not going to go into super specifics on like how to build that roadmap. And I'm happy for you to reach out and ask for tips on how to do that, and always open to sharing. I think I'm going to jump. I think we're doing Q&A right after this. I have a hard stop at 1:15. So here's my email address. Reach out. And if any questions, and follow me on Twitter, 5LE, or find me on LinkedIn. And I have my own sponsorship message of my own, which is that I have a book that's coming out on April 27th. If I can give you an advanced copy in exchange for a review, I'm happy to. Just email me. The book is a lot longer version of this, the 2 years in the making version of this presentation today on how I approach SEO and how to think about how you should build your growth efforts. But the book's coming out April 27th on Amazon. Please, if you are interested in an advanced copy, just let me know. So some of you are probably wondering, if you've never heard about OnCrawl before, why you'd want to consider OnCrawl as a cloud crawling tool when you're perfectly comfortable with Screaming Frog, or you may even be perfectly comfortable with the free version of Screaming Frog. And I think that's a very valid question. If you're running a small site, a blog, or a site with just a few pages, you don't need OnCrawl. Sorry, Laura. You don't need OnCrawl. You'll be just fine with Screaming Frog. But I don't think that's the right approach for SEO. I think you should think about having a large, complex site. And some of you, depending on your industries, I'm happy to answer questions at the end and talk about specifics. But depending on what industry you're in, it may not be blatantly obvious of why you should have a larger site. But by the time we're done, you will hopefully leave this presentation with ideas of why you're going to have a larger site, why your site needs to be more complex, and of course, why you'd want to consider a tool like OnCrawl. OnCrawl is by far the number one tool I use every time I onboard with a new client. And but most of the clients I work with are fairly large and complex. And without OnCrawl, I would be clueless about where their issues were and how to understand their sites. So let's dive into it. So when we think about how most people approach SEO, and I've been privileged to be a part of this industry for a really long time. The first time I ever did SEO is a lot easier. It was really about jamming meta keywords into the meta keyword tag. And we've come a long way since then. But a lot has not changed. So when most people think of SEO, they think about what is it the keyword they're approaching. So like if you're a attorney and you're approaching, you're selling to people like DWIs, you think about DWI as the keyword tool you go after. If you're a roofer and you think about people that are looking for roofs, you think roof is the keyword, you go to keyword research tool. So whatever keyword research tool you use, people would go in there, they put that keyword tool, the primary keyword in, the tool spits out a bunch of other keywords, put those keywords in, spits out some more keywords, and from there you build a content roadmap. And then you take this big list of all of your content ideas, you dedupe it, of course, because some of them are going to be very similar, reordered in different ways. You dedupe it, and then you go and you ask someone to write this content for you. So most people are not going to have a content team that works for them. They'll go hire someone on Upwork or Freelancer or Fiverr or Text Broker, wherever it is you go. Mostly they're all the same. They write good content and they start chipping away at that content roadmap for you. And then once your content is live, people approach link builders. They start thinking about how they're going to generate visibility and how they're going to get backlinks to this. So one way that has become way too popular in the last few years, again, when I first started doing SEO, is as easy as buying links, or it actually didn't even need links. You just went into other blogs and dropped comment links. Then people started buying links, and then Google figured it out. So now we do guest posts. So you partner with people and you get a guest post onto some other site and you put a backlink into your great content. And then you sit back and you wait for this entire process to work. Your content is live, you have some backlinks out there, and you expect the money to roll right in. Now, I think, and this is my opinion, and I hope I know we're putting this up on YouTube and I may get flamed for this, but I think there's a little teeny tiny problem with this approach in that it doesn't work. And I'll caveat this, my saying that it doesn't work with, if you're in working with a brand new site and you have no content yet, and you follow this exact process, you do some keyword research, you post some content up on your website, you build some links to it. Yes, it will work. You will get traffic for it. I'm thinking we're talking about roadmaps for 2021. You already have a site. You already have some sort of baseline in traffic, big or small. You want to increment that, and you want to impress your boss. You want to impress your client. You want to impress yourself if you work for yourself by adding more traffic. Now, creating this big, long content roadmap, in my opinion, it doesn't work. And here's why. There's really nothing you've done that's unique. And I'm not saying that the content itself is not unique. The ideas in the content are not unique. Of course, your content is unique. If you've asked someone to write it up on Upwork, or you've hired someone locally to write the content for you, and you've, of course, vetted their content, the content is unique. It's not going to be duplicate. But what you have in that content is not really unique. Because anybody else that has the same budget for a keyword research tool and the same access to Upwork and the same ability to pay anybody on Upwork for content can do the exact same thing you've done. When, again, the examples I used earlier, you're focusing on DWIs, you're focusing on roofs, maybe you're in a much larger space, you're a bank. Everyone's doing the exact same thing. You're talking about, if you're a bank, you're talking about best credit cards to buy. There are many lists on best credit cards to buy. And there are many content writers that are writing. There are many people writing about DWIs, and what those that do this are focusing on. This entire process is not unique. Anyone can copy this. Anyone can do it. And really, you're hoping that somehow your content will rank higher and you'll get more traffic than everyone else that's done that. And in my opinion, again, I think the reason this doesn't work is because the KPI is wrong. When you start with keyword research, you're looking at how much traffic there is for that specific keyword, who is ranking on that keyword. And when you build your forecast, your hope is that you're going to be somewhere in the top 10 results, or if it's a 7 results search results, or if it's local, you're going to be somewhere in the top results, and you have an expectation of here's how much traffic you're going to get, because this is the ranking you're going to get. It always begins with that ranking. And I think that KPI on focus on rankings is absolutely wrong. And here's an example. Here's a site that I work with. They are one of the larger sites that I have in my Google Search Console account. They get billions and billions of impressions per year. Their rankings are fine. Their rankings improved slightly year over year. They got so much more traffic, and it's not because their rankings changed, it's because their impressions changed. I think that when you focus your SEO efforts, you should think about impressions, and I'll give more details shortly. But instead of thinking about where is it that I'm going to rank better, or what is the keyword I should rank on, think about where are there more users. And more users and more impressions will equal more clicks. Again, rankings are not the clicks, it's the impressions. It's where you're going to get more users. Sorry. And to do that, I think you need to focus on strategy and not tactics. And much of what we put out there in the SEO world is focused on tactics. And pivoting back to my book, and I hope everyone will check it out once it's out. I believe the most important aspect of SEO is strategy. How are you going to get to that end goal, and not the tactics? Again, so much of what we see put out there, and I've contributed much of it, and I will continue to contribute to this, is like, how do you get links? How do you do keyword research? How do you measure your SEO? How do you cross-link? All of these things, those are all tactics. Those are not strategies. Tactics ladder up to a strategy. In order to be truly successful, you need a strategy. But think about the tactics that go into what we do. So the best practice is you put keywords in your title tag. Best practice is that you need X amount of words of copy. The common one right now is 1,000 words of copy. Anything less is considered short form, more is considered long form. You're going to want to make sure you have a clickable title. You want to make sure you have a powerful snippet. This is something newer where people approach how you appear on the search results is important. It's important for your click-through rate. And then another one that is really important that you do is make sure all of your content is effectively internally linked. And then my favorite, I love to jump on this one, is you think about site speed. So site speed, again, is a tactic. So there's so much virtual ink devoted to site speed and core web vitals and how important it is that your site be fast. And if I could, pour a little bit of water on this one, I have worked with many, many sites, and I have never, ever seen site speed hurt a website's traffic. And I've never seen a website get more traffic because they have improved their site speed. Should you focus on site speed? Absolutely. Having a fast site is really, really important for your users. The users who are accessing the site, and we all do this when you're on a slow cell connection, you dump off a website if it's too slow. But should you focus on site speed because it's an SEO tactic? I have never, ever seen that matter. So these are all tactics that we think about, really focusing on the content, focusing on the site speed, focusing on how we link. And in my experience, I have never seen these kinds of things. Again, I'm talking about an existing website that has existing traffic. When you plan out your SEO roadmap, I have never seen this give more than a 10% lift year over year. Again, that will vary. It depends on the space. If you're in, say, a cryptocurrency space, you might do a little bit better. If you're in some other saturated space, you might do a little worse. And I spent a lot of time working at large brands. And if I just look at my non-brand traffic, writing new content, tweaking things, unless I uncovered something brand new, my growth was very, very small. And then one final piece that goes into tactics is we think about links. So this is my typical inbox. I got another few of these this morning, offering to sell me links and guest posts on authoritative sites. And I think that our world has changed. If we think about all the tactics we do and all of the efforts we put into creating more content, and why I believe that you're never really going to get that much growth off of it, again, unless you're in a brand new space, is because Google itself has changed. So some of you may be unfamiliar with these images I have right here. So left to right, this is Google Assistant. I have only owned Android devices. Google Assistant is incredible, right? That is, you speak things to Google. It's for those of you that don't have Android. It's the much, much smarter version of Siri that's built off of Google. Sorry if I offended any Apple fans here. But Google Assistant can really understand the context of what you're asking. You can ask if I need to bring out an umbrella this weekend, and it knows that queries the weather. And by asking those queries, and I love doing random things and watching how the queries change. Google's understanding context based on the words that appear in the order that they appear. They're understanding context based on how you're asking and when you're asking and where you're located. Skipping over all the way to the right, this is Google Lens. If you've never used Google Lens before, Google Lens is in Android, it's part of the camera. If you don't have an Android, you can download it specifically. Google Lens can do OCR, optical character recognition, on photos. You can take a picture of something, and Google many times can recognize what it is you've taken a picture of and give you search results related to that thing that you took a picture of. That is well beyond all of the tactics that we do in the SEO world of like, well, you only need 1,000 words of text and you're going to rank on this content. Well, if Google can understand things based on context and based on imagery, it goes much deeper than that. And that is why I said earlier that it doesn't work. Because years ago, when you did SEO, you wrote content and you built links. It was possible that you could have better links and better content, and you can appear in the search results and you can rank where you expected to rank. Now there is so much more at play. And the final image I have right here is I've moved to Texas. I used to live in the Bay Area before I escaped. And this is Waymo. Waymo is Google's autonomous driving division. So it used to be called Google Self-Driving Cars. Now it's its own company called Waymo. To date, we have never heard of Waymo causing a serious accident. So the same company that provides our search results and that we are looking to improve our traffic from by understanding its algorithm also has algorithms that drive cars. They've driven more autonomous miles than any other company out there, more than Uber, far more than Uber, more than GM. Google has done more simulated driving and more actual driving on the road without anything that we've ever heard in the news. So they have that AI that can understand when they should brake, when they should go faster. You know, because I follow Google and I like a lot of things about search. While I lived in the Bay Area, I had a little thing that I would go next to a Waymo car and see if I could get it to pass me. I'd go in front of it and slow down and see if I can get it to pass me. And they could make all these decisions, again, using so many different inputs. So the AI that goes into keeping people safe on the road is a lot more insignificant than understanding search results. So as we approach SEO, we have to think about SEO from the same lens. It can't simply be about tactics. It can't simply be about writing content, and it can't, of course, be about building links. Google is a lot smarter than that today, which is why I've developed a process called product-led SEO, and this is not new. This will be familiar to anybody that really thinks about SEO and spends a lot of time in the SEO world, which is we're building, instead of content for users and attempting to rank on search results, we're thinking about why users would want to come and find content. What is it that we're providing for them? And we're thinking of the search user as a holistic human being looking for something on search and not someone who we're just targeting with a keyword. And with product-led SEO, I have seen that you can get 1,000% growth. And that is what I think should be on your roadmap this year. You want to really increment your search results and hockey stick growth, your search traffic this year. You want to think about, what is the kind of product that I can build? And if you're unfamiliar with this, strongly recommend that you learn product management skills and think about how you operate as a product manager within a company. And I was fortunate that in my career, I've reported to product leaders at times, and I was able to learn these processes. But these aren't, complicated things to learn. Happens to be that many SEO folks are in marketing and we're required to go to product. If you think, even if you are based in marketing, you sit in marketing, you can still think about SEO from a product standpoint. But the key aspect to thinking about SEO from a product standpoint is that instead of thinking about SEO as tactics, how do I write this piece of content? How do I get links to this piece of content? How do I add an image to this piece of content? How do I get more keywords in this piece of content? We're really thinking about, what is the strategy? What is the end goal? And what are all the processes that I need to get to that place? So as an example, I like to think of programmatic and scalable products. My favorite example of this is Zillow. So think about what Zillow did. 15 years ago, if you were looking to generate traffic in the real estate space, you would write a lot of content about real estate. You would write a lot of content about mortgages. You would write a lot of content about how to pick a home within a city. Instead, Zillow came up with an SEO product, and it is absolutely SEO because it's the only channel you can drive traffic to, is they built a page for every single address in the United States. That is where they started from. And look at where they are today, where that page is so rich. It has images, it has pricing information. There is nothing like it. They have built a complete moat around their entire SEO efforts because everyone that wants to do the same thing has to catch them, and they are years ahead of them. So I like to think of, you're building a product, you're building for an SEO user. There's an SEO user that's looking for this content. However, you're not going to find these ideas in keyword research because no one is finding it yet. And the way keyword research works is that it is based on things that people are already looking for. And we'll get to how to do that in a second. But when you build this, your ideal product should be programmatic, which means that you don't have to physically write content because that is expensive, and it should be scalable. So that means that you can't say, well, I'm going to make it programmatic. I'm going to build 100 of these pages and then I'm done. You want to think about, if I build 1 million of these pages, will I learn enough that I can build 10 million of these pages? We're not creating useless content. We're creating valuable content. Zillow has a page for every address in America. That is not useless content. That is millions of pages. TripAdvisor has a page for every hotel in America and every hotel in the entire world. Those are not useless pages. And much of that page is programmatic, and it is absolutely scalable. And should we ever figure out how to colonize Mars, TripAdvisor already has that template. They already have the architecture that they can go to Mars, and they can, whatever there are their countries and continents, they've got that covered. So to do that, the first thing you want to do is ask why before you ask what. So when you approach SEO from a content standpoint, it's a what? It's a piece of content. I'm going to write a piece of content. When you approach SEO from a product standpoint, you have to understand, why are you creating this? Is there demand for this? Am I creating something of value for users? If you can answer, the answer to that is yes, then you can only then do you think about the what. So first we want to dig into the why. And for that, it's most important to talk to people instead of using metrics. And metrics is search results. Metrics is keyword research. Metrics may be using Google Trends. Instead, I like to begin with actual people. So that may be a survey, and that doesn't have to be a complicated 500-person survey. That could be as simple as asking your family, what would you look for if you were looking for some website in this vertical? What are the questions that you need to answer? If you're fortunate enough to be working with a business that there already is customer data, access that customer data. Look for what it is that those people that are accessing your website or accessing your products are looking for, but not really finding, and you can build a richer data set and richer content around. And then finally, this is my favorite when you're working with a larger company that actually has customer support, whether that's customer support on email or customer support on the phone, all of that is tracked. You can see the questions that the customers are asking over and over and over again. And what is it that you can create to answer those questions, to create something of value for those users? And only once you know that what, so we know we have the why, then we've defined the what, then can we begin with the how. So how is it that we're going to create this content? Is it going to be a library of glossaries? Is it going to be Q&A? Is it going to be a long form content? Is it just going to be images? All of this we're doing in the service of the user, and then we create this product plan. Now, in order for you to be successful doing this and thinking about this from a product standpoint, I believe you need to use product processes. Happy to share the spreadsheet. It is not a complex spreadsheet at all. Just email me or find me on LinkedIn or message me on Twitter. I'll give you a link to the spreadsheet on Google Sheets. What it is, and I use this with all of my clients and use this when I was working in-house at SurveyMonkey, you come up with all of your ideas and all the things you're going to build around your users. And then you're going to rank them. So too often when we focus on content, we're stack ranking. Here's my list of content. I'm going to create it, and I'm stack ranking based on search volume. Instead, because I'm building products, I'm building things that are more complex, I'm stack ranking it based on how many engineers will it take me to build? What sort of data sets do I need? How much is it going to cost me? How long will it take to launch this? And then how long will it take once it's launched until I'm generating any ROI on it? And that's how we're going to stack rank. And now you give this to product teams or you give it to engineers. This is the way that they understand and they prioritize. Becomes a lot easier for them to build for you. Now, I have seen from a marketing standpoint, one of the hardest things you have to do as a marketer and you have to do as SEO is convince other people to believe in what you're doing. Because we're not actually building ourselves. We're not actually designing. We're not actually writing. We're probably not building links. We're not doing our own PR. So all of this, we need other people to buy into our vision. So as much as you can speak those other teams' languages, those other people's languages, your client's language, you can be more successful in them believing and wanting to build for you. And then to do that, I think you sell with conversions. So you sell with dollars, revenue, downloads, whatever the asset is that everyone is chasing, whatever that KPI is that everyone within a company or your clients are chasing, that is what you're going to chase. I think a big mistake SEO folks make is that they use search volume and they use rankings, that's not the language of everyone else within a company. Everyone else within a company is building products, they're creating content optimized towards some end result. Use that same end result. And I know that for the search group here, we have paid marketing people here, and paid marketing would never say, well, I'm going to spend money on this because I need to be number one. And I'm talking about a non-branded keyword. So they're not saying they need to be number one. They're optimizing their spend based on results or lifetime value, downloads, whatever it is. So in SEO, you need to do the exact same thing. Sell, and you have to sell internally based on those end results and how you're going to drive towards that KPI. And you're going to optimize towards that KPI, and you'll be a lot more successful. And then when you're forecasting, forecast based on the end results of that KPI and use the common language that everyone else within the organization uses, which might be total addressable market. So instead of saying, well, this keyword has 10,000 searches per month, and I'm going to rank number 3 on it, which is going to give me some click-through rate, and I believe that I'm going to get 30% of that click-through of that traffic. And therefore, here's how much traffic I'll get. And then you back into some sort of conversion rate. I say, here's how many people are looking for this product. And let's say in Zillow's case, here's how many buyers of real estate there are per year. Here's how I'm going to go ahead and capture that. So I'm going to forecast based on this. Now, I know some of you listening are going to push back and say, well, that sounds like BS. Well, then if you think that sounds like BS, you've never been in a product launch meeting. It is full of as much BS as possible. So don't try to be as honest and transparent as possible. Do exactly like other people are doing. Not that I'm saying you need to BS anybody and not be honest and not be transparent, but use those same forecasting efforts and say, well, I'm going after all home buyers in the US. There are, let's say, 10 million home buyers every year. I'm going to capture this amount because this amount of people do research on the internet, and I'm creating URLs for all of that, and this is my expected goal. Again, instead of there are 10,000 searches, and I think I'm going to get 30% of those searches. Because again, even when you do that, I hope you're grossing it up and saying, well, the search keyword tools don't capture all that search volume to begin with anyways. So again, you're going to forecast based on the content you're creating, the product you're creating, and how much people in general and how many people in general there are looking for that, and then try to apply a dollar amount to it and not a search click amount to it. Now, when you think about all this holistically, we can start looking at what I think is the lowest hanging fruit in all of SEO, which is branded results. So too often, because we're all going after search results and we're all going after rankings, we only think in the non-brand bucket. We only think with a non-brand lens, which is anything that doesn't include the brand name. Depending on your brand, and I've been fortunate to work with some really large brands, you may be leaving a lot of low-hanging fruit on the table. So if there are any brand results and you're not already ranking, that's where you want to put your efforts. Because A, if you think about my prioritization spreadsheet, it's a lot easier to get there. It's a lot more profitable. You're just extending on your existing efforts. You don't need to hope that and pray that things might work out. This is already working for you. It already is your brand. So if you think about where am I going to put SEO efforts, and I think this is what you should do for 2021, do this in the next few months. Where am I going to put SEO efforts that are going to return value to me? This is one of the easiest places to go. Look at your brand results where you're not already driving traffic and start driving traffic. And here's some ideas on where you find those results. Look at search suggests. So throw your brand name in, whatever it is, your brand name. Look for all the suggested results. Make sure that you're visible. Can't guarantee you're going to be number one, but make sure you're visible in all those results. Look for related queries to your brand. So that's things that Google thinks that are related to you. I'm working with a really large client right now, and they're ranking on their competitor's brand because Google has determined that my client is the verb for that entire vertical. So when I look at related queries, I have an option and I can better rank on all of the competitor brands because Google already thinks that they're related. So use that as an idea around anything related to your brand. You could try to rank on also and try to create content towards also. Competitor comparisons. So if people are comparing you or your client versus competitors, that is low-hanging fruit for conversion. Make sure you have content there. Look at your Google Search Console. Any results that you're seeing related to your brand where you're not generating a lot of traffic, don't have high visibility, build more content there. And then finally, I think it's most important to really focus on click-through rate instead of rankings. So if you double your click-through rate, you will get double the results or double the clicks. Whereas if you double your ranking, you can't guarantee that you're going to get double the number of clicks. So from a click-through rate standpoint, anything you can do to optimize there will have immediate impact on your clicks, if not your bottom line. And here's some non-brand ideas, going back to really thinking about the products you can create. So if there are government resources, I worked with a client in the HR space, that space is littered with government resources that are terrible. Employer handbooks that come from government agencies. There are 50 states. There are hundreds of cities. All of this becomes an opportunity to create, this isn't programmatic, but to create content and expose it to the web and build lots and lots of pages. If there are lots of PDFs in your verticals, those are opportunities to expose them. If you work in, say, a hardware vertical, there may be PDF manuals. What can you do with all those PDF manuals? There are thousands of them. There are potentially tens of thousands of manuals. What can you do? What sort of content can you create? Look at Reddit, Quora, Facebook, and even Yahoo Answers for the types of questions people are asking. That's just the tip of the iceberg around the things that people want to know about your vertical but are potentially not being answered. Could you use that to find some way to build a product and to build something scalable? And then finally, if there are any structured data sets, healthcare, there's lots of data. The government releases lots of data. Insurance companies release a lot of data. Can you take all these data sets and merge them together to create some new sort of data set that is not yet offered? Again, thinking exactly what Zillow did. They took images, essentially street view of houses. They took neighborhood ideas coming from the government. They took home values, which came from every single local city government, and merged it to create the product they have today. So you may say, well, everything that I want to do in my vertical already exists. There's no opportunities for me, but I don't believe that will ever be the case. Think about all of the things that already exist and what happens if you marry them together. So now, big question, does any of this work? So I'll give you a few examples. So this is a company I started working with at the bottom early in 2020. They already had everything necessary. The only changes we made was productizing what they offered. So instead of having a long blog, which is how they focused on their content, we turned everything, this is an e-commerce related site, we turned it all into architecture and product. All the effort we put into was creating a good architecture around what they had and creating good category and product landing pages. And you can see what they did with their traffic. This is actually 1,000% growth. And it is even greater on a revenue side because they were able to build up their brand. It's my favorite branded client. This client was leaving everything on the table because they only focused on non-brand. They were working with an SEO agency that gave them a content roadmap that did precisely what I said earlier you should not be doing. We doubled down on their branded content, drove a lot more traffic, and wouldn't you know it, the revenue is even greater than this graph because these are customers they were leaving on the table because they were looking for their brand and finding their competitors. And then this is a site that I worked with. The company name is Drops. Website's languagedrops.com. We started this from scratch. They were building a online dictionary for many languages. We built a product-led effort, which was, we didn't think about what are the pages, what are the most popular keywords we're going to go after, what are the most popular translations we're going to go after. Instead, we thought about how is it that we could build this holistically, completely ignoring any search traffic, and start building towards that. So we did the same thing we did for Hawaiian, which is surprisingly to me a language, that we did for German. And it ended up that we found little areas where there was less competition and we were able to drive a lot more traffic. And if you were curious about Hawaiian, you ended up finding this website and became more curious about German, which was much harder to find from a search result standpoint. So we didn't focus on search. We focused on creating a really good product. How do we build SEO best practices into this architecture? And we would get traffic, And of course, this is also thousands of % growth. Big question that many people ask, and then many clients ask when I talk about this, is how long does it take? So this is a product process. So for those of you that work in SEO, your clients ask, or your bosses ask, or you ask yourself, how long will it take? And you give that it depends answer. It could take anywhere from 24 hours to 6 years. Here we're building a product. How long will it take? Well, it depends how long engineers take to build everything. It depends how long designers take to build everything. There are a lot of inputs that go into this. Once you've built it, if you've done your right research, there is a user base there, it will start to grow. Again, like those graphs I showed earlier, those are year-long graphs. It takes a long time. But the longer it takes, the more headway you have against your competitors when they figure out what you've done. Again, think about Zillow. Zillow is years ahead of any of their competitors, and they can acquire all their competitors, and they may potentially always be in a dominant position. So don't think about the length of time it will take as a blocker. Think about the length of time it will take as a blocker for your competitors. Link building. I know I mentioned this earlier, like how should you build links? And I don't think you should do guest posts. New word that is popular in this space is digital PR. I think that is exactly what you should do. You want to do PR around what you've built. You want to talk about the great product you've built. If you built something that is good for users, people will want to talk about you. If they give you links, great. Most of the time, media will give you links. If they don't give you links, that's great too, because it'll eventually grow. I think one of the things I've seen in my SEO career is initially, link building was all about quantity. Then it became about quality. I think we're still in a place that you don't really need that much quantity because quality is so low. So build great products, do great PR. I personally work with a digital PR agency that's absolutely amazing. And they have been able to get the clients I work with placed in the greatest places because they're talking about them from a PR standpoint. The journalists are talking about the great product they have. Happy to provide recommendations if anybody reaches out. When you think about who do you hire, so if you're an SEO person, if you're a product person, who is it that you need to hire within a company? I personally recommend to my clients that they hire project managers and program managers because a lot of these inputs, those of you that are in SEO and that are driving this, you're the product manager, you're the visionary, you're the strategist. You need someone to help control all those inputs. You need someone to help you build the plans for the designer. You need someone to help make sure the designer stays on track, the content person stays on track, the data science person stays on track. So you want someone that can help grease the wheels, bring the whole picture together, rather than an SEO person who's great at doing research. You are the product person. If you are the SEO person today, become that product person. From a tool standpoint, I think the most important thing you need is an insight into revenue. I'm always surprised when I start working with a new client or talk to an SEO person I'm mentoring when they don't understand how the efforts they are putting in translate into revenue at the end. You must get a view into revenue. Now, the caveat to this is every time I've tried to get insight into revenue, I've discovered that it is not appropriately tracked. So that's the first thing you're going to do. Build some sort of tracking capability into understanding how your SEO is playing into the dollars that you drive for the business. You need Google Search Console, you need Bing Search Console, because the number one metric I look at is impressions. So if I can't see the impressions and I can't see the results that I'm driving from an impression standpoint, I am essentially flying blind. I like to look at a keyword research tool because that will help me optimize once I've figured out the product that I'm creating. What words do I use? But that is not the primary tool. Of course, you're going to need OnCrawl or any other cloud crawling tool, but OnCrawl is my favorite because you're building lots and lots of pages. And you want to make sure all those pages are appropriately cross-linked. When you build millions of pages, when you build even less than millions, one big challenge you're going to have is orphaned pages. You don't want orphaned pages. Only a crawling tool will find those for you. From a content standpoint, you do want to build out the right kind of content. Make sure you're using the right words and build out briefs. I like using ClearScope for building out those briefs. And then finally, link building, like I just said, it comes from PR. So either you work with a PR agency or approach this from a PR standpoint and use your own PR skills, which means reaching out to journalists and saying, I've created a really cool product, instead of saying, can I guest post on your website? So to wrap up before we get into questions, I don't think content SEO scales. It's very easy for any of your competitors to replicate. And if you're doing it right, it's very expensive. Content could cost you from $500 to $1,500 a piece of content. Just think about what sort of budget you need if you have a content roadmap that has thousands and thousands of ideas on that. When you approach SEO from a product-led standpoint, we're looking at driving traffic, but most importantly, we're driving revenue. Because the only reason we're going to do this is because we know there's users and dollars at the other end of this. When we're building this, it's not just about SEO, it's about the content teams. We're investing in all of this. You want to make sure you have content, you have design, you have engineering, you have buy-in from all across the company because this is a product. We're of course focusing on the user. I know this has become cliche to say SEO focuses on the user, but I think in many cases when you're building content, you're not really focusing on the user if you're looking at keyword research as your primary input. You're focusing on the user that searched that keyword and then it ended up in the keyword research tool. And then you wrote content, which hopefully is user-focused. I'm saying we should focus on the user. Think about what it is that our users are looking for and build that entire asset for them. And then most importantly, when you're doing this, whether you're a consultant or an in-house SEO person or building SEO for yourself, there is no template. No one can sell you the exact way to do SEO because this will differ for every single business. These are your strategies. This is completely a product of your own efforts and your own research. And if you are successful, there's a lot of upside at the end of this. So here's how you can get in touch with me. I know I went through a lot of this fast. You can, of course, and should, of course, get access to the book and buy the book on April 27th. Happy to share earlier versions if you can help me out with a little bit of reviews here. And please do follow me on social, and here's how you can get in touch. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks so much, Eli. So if y'all have any questions, make sure to put them in the chat. We really appreciate you coming out and speaking with us, Eli. One of the questions that I had was, what are some of the kind of newbie mistakes that somebody makes whenever they're building these product pages at scale?
You don't want to just rush into anything. So the most important piece here is that you're building something good. You're building something effective. So when a designer says, I want to spend more time building this because I want to design it effectively, don't make artificial deadlines. You're building something great. Just think about what would happen if, again, Zillow rushed out the crappiest product, and then Trulia, who Zillow ended up acquiring, said, oh, that's a great idea. We're going to do it better. So I think that's the biggest mistake. Think about this as you're creating something of value for a user. Make sure it's completely done.
Okay, that's some great advice. So it looks like we've got some people typing in the chat right now. So another question, whenever you go and you target brand searches, what are some of the most interesting finds or gaps in content that you've discovered from a brand perspective?
Oh, this is a great question. So I worked at SurveyMonkey for a number of years, price. So, I'll jump ahead before I answer that question. So any of you in the software space are familiar with G2 and Capterra, and there's a bunch of other sites just like that. Actually, I did a little consulting for G2, so I saw how effective they are at SEO. If you are letting G2 do your SEO for you and giving ranking on your brand results, you're letting a site, first of all, they're going to sell you the traffic back because in leads, and even worse than that, they can funnel your traffic to your competitors. So if someone searches, let's say SurveyMonkey reviews, and they find G2, then G2 can now say, or Capterra or any of those sites, well, you actually should check out Qualtrics. So that is something you should absolutely make sure you own. Anything that G2 is getting, or Capterra or any of these other review sites are getting on your brand, get that back. Make sure that you have that on your website. So at SurveyMonkey, we would lose on things like price and reviews, build all that content internally. From a brand perspective, my favorite large brand I worked with where there was a lot of upside is I did some consulting with WordPress. So WordPress is they compete with themselves because everybody has WordPress for free. So there's a lot of upside in WordPress saying, hey, WordPress.com saying we also have WordPress, you should pay us instead of paying GoDaddy or WP Engine or any of these other WordPress providers. So whatever brand you're in, if your brand is large, there's a lot of opportunity. If your brand is small, there may be less opportunity. But again, low-hanging fruit is things like reviews and cost. You should also figure out how to rank on things like your brand sucks. Like, maybe there's an opportunity there. Don't seed any brand results. Those should be the easiest things for you to get visibility on.
Okay, so we've got 2 questions in the chat here. Steve says, considering you recommend pushing for PR instead of guest posting or traditional link building, should we be concerned with do follow or no follow backlinks?
No, absolutely not. I've done testing on this. It's been a while since I tested it, but my favorite place to think about no follow is Wikipedia. So has anyone ever tried putting up a Wikipedia link? If you have, you'll know like how hard it is to get a link to stick in Wikipedia. There's like editors out there who just like live to like police Wikipedia for free. Google knows that too. So just because a link is no followed on Wikipedia, I find it hard to believe, and I tested this, that Google will just say, well, it's no followed, so we're going to disregard all the effort it took to get that link on Wikipedia. Now, I think another thing is, again, I mentioned this earlier when I talked about the AI Google has, and from Google Lens and from Google Assistant and Waymo. There is no way that they're going to say, well, all of our AI determined that this link is really valuable, but the human that wrote this piece of content said it's no followed, so therefore we're just going to defer to that human. So I would say get as many links as you can. Make sure that they're relevant. Make sure they're useful. The only time I would think do follow or no follow would come up is if you're paying for it. So if you're paying for links, it may not be very relevant. If you're getting a link in the New York Times and the New York Times annoyingly no follows it, that's a link. I think it's a link.
Okay, that's some great insight. So Jeff also has a question here. He says, let's say our product is documentation. We would like to get documents in people's hands quickly. Ideas for how you would focus on that? Currently use deflection rates as our cost of a document.
Jeff, can you clarify documentation? Like we're talking copies of something. All right. Any other questions while Jeff clarifies, Julie?
Jeff says accepted solutions.
Okay. I don't know accepted solutions is either. Sorry.
It looks like he's typing a bit of clarification in the chat. Technical configurations.
Okay. Yeah. Technical configurations is awesome. That I think is exactly what I was saying earlier about like product manuals. So I would figure out the little pieces within those product manuals, within your technical solutions to break it out. So like, are people looking for troubleshooting? So make sure you have content on troubleshooting. One of my favorite things that I run across all the time is bug codes. So if you have an electronics that you get a bug code and you want to know how to fix your electronic, you're going to go Google it. So those are great areas of opportunity to create programmatic. Like if you can extract whatever those technical configurations are, now you're creating programmatic pages. And don't half-ass it like most people do when they have these sort of documentation is they're like, oh, it's a 60-page document. Let me just upload it as a PDF. So those are opportunities to not do that.
Okay, thanks. So then we've got a question from Harpreet. And he works in the CBD space where it's super competitive, guest posting is rife, and there are hundreds of articles that are on very high domain authority sites, which is very difficult to compete with. He liked your example of Zillow link building pages for every location. They're doing something similar, but as a two-man team, they have outsourced work to content spinners. What's your opinion on scaling with a content spinner?
Don't invest too much in it. I think Google will come crack down on it. I would say take a couple steps back, think about the user. If you're targeting things like CBD Philadelphia and that CBD Philadelphia is the same as CBD New York, Eventually Google will figure it out. So figure out like how is CBD Philadelphia will be a lot different than CBD New York without spinning content. Because if you spin content with software, Google can unspin it with software. Just keep in mind that Google is a lot smarter than we give them credit for if you think about all the AI tools that we have access to. Another AI tool that I didn't call out, which I'm sure many of us are using, is Smart Compose in Gmail. So if anybody's used Smart Compose in Gmail, there are two ways that Smart Compose works. One is that it has the ways that you usually do things. So like if you begin emails with hi guys or hey team or hey there, it will start your emails with that. So it's looking at your own personal way of doing things. And then it's also using the way the world does things. So it looks at context. So keep in mind that just because like if you're using software that does that, Google has software that does that too, and they can just unspin it and they'll catch you.
That's a really good point. So Iman is asking a question here. He's wondering if you have any recommendations to improve overall performance. He admits that the question is a bit broad, but he's looking for some quick wins to help him out.
Click-through rate. So go on Search Console and sort. I don't know if you could do this. You download your Search Console results into Google Sheets or Excel, and then create a threshold or look for your average and then look for any click-through result that's below your average and optimize those click-throughs. If the click-through is really low because your title tag is not targeted to that keyword, so you also want to look at keywords there, then that may be an opportunity to create a new piece of content. So click-throughs, like I said earlier, doubling click-through will double your clicks, whereas doubling rankings does not double that. Doubling impressions does not double your clicks. So if we're looking to drive more traffic, double click-through is your easiest thing to do, and look for anomalies within your click-throughs. Okay,
that's some great advice. Well, it looks like that those are all the questions in the chat. Bart is asking for the title of your book again.
Product-led SEO. So, and
if somebody wants to buy this book, is it where can they get a copy?
Yeah, for now, email me or go to my site and get on the list. It is not available until April 27th here. Get a cover over here. There. So April 27th, it'll be out on Amazon.
Okay. That's pretty exciting.
A lot of work to get to this point, and I appreciate everyone that will participate with me in this journey.
Well, great. Well, that looks like those are all the questions so far. Everybody be sure to check out Eli's book. And again, thank you to OnCrawl for sponsoring this session. Again, OnCrawl, like Eli mentioned, is a great tool for cloud crawling, especially if you're looking to build products at scale like Eli is suggesting. So with that, I will let you all go, but thank you for joining us, and make sure to come back next month for Jason Brown, who's going to talk about local SEO.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, OnCrawl, for sponsoring.
Thanks.